How do you feel without thinking? How do you think without feeling? If you deem that to be obvious, and if you don't reject the underlying idea that mind and body are separate, that indeed there is a fight waging inside you between your heart and your brain, between the beast and the spirit, between you and the part you don't want to see true, then I am sorry, you've fallen victim to the biggest scam since, well, no shit, probably the biggest scam since, because thinking and feeling is the same. But let's start at the beginning. Where does our modern notion and intuitive understanding of emotions come from? From our intuition? Back in the days there was René Descartes, who did this whole I think, therefore I am thing. So there was the I and the thinking. A disassociation, if you will. A disassociation. But even way before that, there was Plato. He believed that reason and rationality were the good part of us, the valuable part, our essence. And we spoke about essences and why you should be skeptical of them in the last video, but that's just a side note. In Plato's view, reason is always under siege of the lower primitive needs and instincts of the body, namely emotions. Plato generally believed that each thing in the universe had a perfect essence it stems from. In his words, a form. And now get this. His story was that humans formerly were created as divine beings of reason, given a perfect shape as house for their immortal souls and intellect. A sphere. Thus, the shape of our head. But since rolling around Earth is kind of impractical, the gods created bodies to carry around the perfect spheres. And with them, not only came mortality, but also pleasures, emotions, and senses. Necessary evils, as he puts it, to not fall victim to the laws of physics, I guess. I honestly do not really understand this part. It just doesn't seem like a very successful divine intervention. Anyways. And so dualism was born, the source of what many of us still believe today. Plato's compelling morality tale of inner conflict remains one of the most cherished narratives in Western civilization. Who amongst us has never felt an inner tug of war between desire and reason? And I mean, you may subscribe to this in some kind of weird or more elaborate way, but it all starts to feel a little bit shady when you take into account that the people that have been most proud of their perfect spheres back then were all philosophers. And philosophers like Plato believed that a philosopher king should actually rule the people. Plato also believed that who was giving into their emotions and pleasures would be reborn as a woman. And, like I explained, he believed the only reason we have bodies is so that we do not roll off the edge of the earth. So, I mean, it's really up to you to decide what you want to make of this. Plato's theory of mind became a blueprint for brain science. Plato actually did not speak of only two, but three forces: instincts, emotions, or actually passions, and reason. Sounds familiar? Well, that might be because scientists reasoned we evolved from lizards that only had a lizard brain. Then, as we evolved into mammals, we evolved an emotional brain. But once we got to the stage of becoming human, we developed another nice new layer that makes us special, especially logical and reasonable. You might know these three layers as amygdala, limbic system, and neocortex, or in short, the triune brain. In the coming years, popularized by Carl Sagan, it became the modern myth of the brain. But it is really just that, a myth. Or considering more recent evidence and knowledge, it is wrong. And explaining what about it is wrong is a whole video of its own, if not a whole video series. But here's the gist. You don't have an inner lizard or an emotional beast brain. There is no such thing as a limbic system dedicated to emotions. And your misnamed neocortex is not a new part. The triune brain idea and its epic battle between emotions and instincts and rationality is a modern myth. Yet you may still be asking, why does the whole idea of dualism and the triune brain just feel so natural? There are three reasons dualism feels intuitively right. One is cultural learning. You grew up in a world where there is a standard. Questioning, analyzing, and disapproving it is way harder than simply going along with it and engaging with a social and cultural environment that believes the same thing you do. It's also way more pleasant, let's be honest. And when I say that it's easier to accept this, I don't mean as in,
oh, I don't want to think for myself.
But I just mean it's literally energy conservation in your brain. That's what it is. And maybe a bit of our social nature. Maybe this is just too nuanced. Maybe this is just me rambling.
Maybe.
What I'm meant to say mainly is you get taught to think this way, explicitly and implicitly. The second reason is because of what it feels like, actually what we feel like. We feel like a mind that is trapped in a body, a conscious stream of thoughts that is carried around in a meat vehicle, a sphere prevented from aimlessly rolling around. I just can't get over this. And if you think that mind in a meat vehicle thing is an interesting way to put it, think about how a brain must feel like. A thick lump of meat trapped in a dark box and forced to make sense out of the world through electrical stimuli. No ears, no eyes, no nose, no touch, only ambiguous signals, noisy information that needs to be told apart. If you'd be the brain, you would argue that a world beyond those signals does not exist. You don't have any eyes, ears, nose, skin, or anything. There's only you and the stimuli. Is that an accurate description of how things are, or just as how they are perceived? Because the reason I'm asking is that that is the exact way we go about explaining mind-body dualism in a great many things in the world. We perceive them, therefore we argue that's how they must be. We believe that we think, therefore we are. Given the case that you can actually perceive yourself, which is not a given. But let's not go there. The third reason why mind-body dualism feels so natural is something called metacognition. It is the ability to think about your thoughts. We briefly spoken about this in the last video. For instance, it can be a moment where you catch yourself thinking something like, wow, these are weird thoughts. Are they though? Why am I thinking about what I'm thinking? Oh God, wait. Have I gone crazy? Is this how it starts? No, wait, hold on. How would I know that I'm crazy if I went crazy? The answer is metacognition. In this case, conscious metacognition. But it does not need to be conscious, and it happens all the time. This unique ability can create an extremely weird feedback loop, in which we are able to separate one stream of thinking from another, or even our conscious thoughts from more unconscious thinking, as if we are distinct from our own thoughts. A disassociation, if you will. There you go, I got it! I f***ing got it! Disassociate... Let's not talk about it. But if we'd go by that logic, we're not just separate from our body, but we are separate from our thoughts. And if we are separate from both, then what actually remains? So is it the part that thinks we are separate? But that's a thought again. That can't be. Oh, wait, I got it. It is consciousness. But what is consciousness? Funny you ask, because that's a topic I don't want to even get into, but let me tell you so much. It is most probably not what you intuitively perceive it to be, because that would be that mind of yours, at least a part of it, the part that feels like you. That mind that can think about its own thoughts and hence cannot be your essence. Which essentially boils down into believing that there must be some essence, some part of you can be reduced to. But that, I am afraid, is purely Western analytical thinking. Cultures that rather engage in holistic thinking, they do not believe in some essence that is supposed to be you. They do not even necessarily believe that you are distinct from your environment, but rather that you are a part of it. Just like you are part of many sums of even more parts. Just like emotions and thinking are part of the same thing. Parts of you. And before we move on, and some of your smart asses take the easy way out, being all like, okay, if it's not consciousness, it must be the almighty, omnipresent, all-powerful unconsciousness. Consider the following. As analytical thinkers and visually driven beings with language as our main means to communicate, we design lingual entities to better communicate and think about things. Or in short, we use humanizing metaphors like the economy or the society or the unconscious. But these things are not things. There are sets of constantly changing, interconnected and interrelated actions, events, effects, entities and identities. They are literally defined by the sum of their variety, not by their essence. So what if the unconscious is simply the absence of consciousness and thus the sum of all other powers and mechanisms working instead? That then would basically be the body, biology. The unconscious, just like you, most probably is not just one thing. And like in every act of our existence, there's something unconscious accompanied by consciousness. Thoughts are always accompanied by emotions, and emotions are always accompanied by thoughts. Even in the moments during meditation in which you think you are not thinking, there is thinking happening. That relief you feel is simply the absence of compulsive reaction-driven thinking. It is the feeling of giving fully into the state you are in. It feels like flow. And if you really think about it, flow does not feel a certain way. There's no feeling of flow. Yes, it feels effortless and all, but only if you remember it. When you are truly in flow, you don't feel the flow. You are in the world without any feeling at all, it seems. Yet you feel exactly what you would feel like if you would feel aligned. The state of balance provides you with an almost superhuman ability to do what you need to do in a specific moment or scenario. To write for hours and ultimately finish a novel. To see every action in slow motion when competing in sports. To find stillness in meditation. It is only when things are out of balance that you perceive yourself as overly rational, analytical, or overly emotional, sensitive. Since when everything is in balance, the only way it feels is natural. Which is happening day by day and again, maybe without you ever realizing. The brief moments, everything seems fine, are the same moments you feel aligned. Thinking and feeling is the same. And that is natural. So that feels kind of satisfying, doesn't it? At least that's what I'm hoping. But there's still an issue, a problem of sorts. If dualism is wrong, oneness must be right, right? At least that's what some people point to. Everything is one. And I personally subscribe to that belief. I love it. But we just naturally chop up everything into little pieces and categorize to make sense out of the world. We engage in dualism all the time. So how can the true nature of the universe be oneness when we are natural dualists? That might be a question for another day, but there's a bigger point I'd like to push. Answering the big questions of life, boldly and confident, filled with content that just naturally appeals to us, should not be the biggest priority, nor should it be the best argument. Staying curious and setting out to explore this world and life we live in should be. And gaining knowledge and understanding in the process might be nothing but just a convenient side effect. Just like assuming oneness to be true, while seeing oneself separate from it seems a bit mindless, assuming you're absolutely right in an ever-changing world is nothing but absolutely silly. Which, by the way, is not to say that you cannot be wrong, but that is a topic for another day. I see you. Let me add to this video that just like with the last one, these videos are inspired by the books I'm basing this on, but I do not claim to get things completely right. In fact, some of the things that I'm saying are like my personal interpretations and conclusions, like especially the part with being in flow and being aligned. That's something that I think I've read somewhere in between the lines. Or I just stole it. The books that inspired me to make this video I already mentioned at the beginning title, but here's a brief list of a few other books I recommend that are kind of on topic or at least related, and I might add a few more titles in the description box below, just in case you're interested, you want to investigate in for yourself, or read those for pleasure, whatever you prefer. Thanks so much for watching, and I see you in the next one.